The Great Hall of the Galactic conquered, stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds, and its walls were lined with the flags of 10,000 species. Some of those flags had hung there for millions of years, others were so new that the fabric still held the smell of dye. In the center of the hall stood a platform of white stone. This was where empires announced their wars. Ambassador Iran of the Dominion stood on that platform now. His body was made of living crystal, and light passed through him in beautiful patterns of blue and violet. His voice rang out like struck glass, filling every corner of the massive space. The Dominion hereby declares formal war upon the species known as humanity, he announced. Let all present witness this declaration. And GT snorts. And GT, let history record that we gave them proper notice. Let none say we acted without honor. The assembled delegates shifted and murmured. War declarations were rare but not unheard of. What made this one interesting was the target. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 200 years ago. In that time they had spread across nearly 40 star systems. They built colonies, they traded goods, they sent their young to study at alien universities and welcomed alien students to their own worlds. They were by all accounts an unremarkable species, soft bodies, short lives, a single that they had nearly destroyed before escaping into space. They were different. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 800,000 years. Their fleets numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Their warriors were living gemstones that could survive in vacuum and regenerate from almost any wound. They had crushed 17 species into extinction and absorbed 40 more into their dominion. This war, most observers thought, would last perhaps a month. Ambassador rose from her seat in the human section. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple dark suit with no medals or decorations. When she walked to the central platform, her footsteps made soft sounds on the ancient stone. She stopped a few feet from Iran and looked up at him. The ambassador towered over her by nearly 3 ft. I must ask, she said, are you certain? Iran made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. It was laughter. Do you hope to change our minds with begging? Human, the declaration is made. Your expansion into the corridor has threatened our interests for the last time. I am not begging, Sid. I am asking if you are certain. This is an important question. Please consider it carefully. We are certain. Very well. I ask a second time, as is my right under conquered law. Ambassador, Iran is the Dominion certain that it wishes to declare war upon humanity? The murmuring in the hall grew louder. This was unusual. The right to ask 3 times was an old law almost forgotten. It had been created in ancient times to prevent war started by misunderstanding or pride, or Iran's crystal body flickered with irritation. We are certain. Human, do not waste the conquered time, nodded slowly. Then I ask a third and final time. I ask you to consider not your pride or your politics, but your people, your children, your future. Ambassador, is the Dominion absolutely certain that it wishes to declare war upon humanity? For a moment, silence filled the great hall. 10,000 delegates held their breath. Something in the human ambassador's voice had changed. It was still calm, still quiet, but there was something beneath it now, something old, and patient and utterly without fear. Or stepped forward until he loomed directly over her. Your threats do not frighten us, human. We have destroyed species far greater than yours. We are certain, we are completely certain. Now, accept the declaration or flee this hall. In cowardice. Ambassador smiled. It was a small, tired smile. Very well, she said. On behalf of the United Terran Confederacy, I formally accept the Dominion's declaration of war. I thank you for the courtesy of clarity. She turned and began walking back toward the human section. The other human delegates were already standing, gathering their materials, preparing to leave. That is all Iran called after her. No protests, no appeals for alliance, no desperate bargaining. Stopped and looked back over her shoulder. What would be the point? You have made your choice. Now we will all live with it. She continued walking. At the edge of the hall, she passed the section where the delegation sat. There were among the oldest species in the conquered. Their representative, a being called Counselor, had witnessed the rise and fall of empires that were ancient before the first achieved consciousness. As past rose from his seat, his movements were slow and heavy, as if a great weight had settled on his shoulders. Without a word to his own delegation, he left the hall through a side passage. Several delegates noticed this. They found it strange the never left important sessions early. Back on the central platform, Iran was accepting congratulations from allied delegations. This crystal body sparkled with pride and anticipation. How long do you expect the campaign to last? Asked a delegate from one of this client species. A standard month at most, Iran said. Humans are biological creatures with soft tissue and fragile bones. They cannot survive in vacuum. They cannot regenerate. Their ships are adequate but few. Our third fleet alone outnumbers their entire navy, and their colonies will be occupied and repurposed. The humans themselves will be given a choice: serve the Dominion or be relocated to reservation worlds. We are not cruel. We simply cannot allow their continued expansion to threaten our borders. Far across the hall in a shadowed cove, a junior aide found Counselor sitting alone. The old being's many eyes were closed and his breathing was shallow. Counselor, are you unwell? Opened his eyes slowly. I was present at first contact, he said quietly, 200 years ago, when humanity emerged from their system and met the wider galaxy for the first time. Yes, Counselor, it is a great honor that you witness such history. You misunderstand. It was not an honor, it was a warning. His voice dropped lower. We studied them in those first years. We looked at their history, their biology, their psychology. We saw what they had done to their own world and to each other. We saw what they were capable of. And what are they capable of? Counselor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Everything they are capable of. Everything. That is what makes them so dangerous, not their strength or their technology or their numbers, their willingness, their absolute terrifying willingness to do whatever is necessary to survive. He rose slowly to his feet. The belief they have declared war on a civilization. They are wrong. They have declared war on a species that spent 200,000 years fighting its own planet for the right to exist, a species that crawled out of the mud, survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed hundreds of millions and still kept going. They have ruled their empire for 800,000 years because no one has seriously challenged them. He looked toward the distant platform where Iran still stood glittering with pride. They have never faced anything like humanity, and by the time they understand their mistake, it will be far too late. In the human delegation's quarters, Ambassador stood at a window looking out at the stars. Her aide approached with a communication device. "Ma'am, the council is asking for instructions." Did not turn from the window. "Tell them to begin. Tell them we gave the every chance. Tell them." She paused. "Tell them I am sorry it came to this." "Yes, ma'am." "And the evacuation protocols already in motion. Every human colony in the border regions will be empty within 60 hours. They will think we are running." Finally turned. Her eyes were hard now, all the softness gone. "Let them think what they want. They wanted a war. Now they will learn what that means." 3 days after the declaration, the archives of the Galactic Concord opened their files on humanity. This was standard practice before any war. Species considering involvement or alliance could review the records and make informed decisions. The junior archivist assigned to compile the human file was unnamed. There were natural scholars, their entire culture built around the preservation and study of knowledge, had compiled files on 17 species before. He expected this one to be quick and simple. He was wrong. First layer of data was exactly what everyone expected. Humanity had emerged from a single planet called Earth approximately 200,000 years before. They had achieved space travel only 300 years ago. They had joined the galactic community 2 centuries past. Their current population was estimated at 47 billion across 38 star systems. Their military consisted of approximately 12,000 vessels of various sizes, a modest number compared to the great powers. Noted all of this in his report. Then he dug deeper. The second layer was their biology. Humans were persistence predators, a rare classification that made pause. Most intelligent species had evolved from ambush predators or prey animals. Persistence predators were different. They did not chase their prey with speed. They followed it hour after hour, day after day, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, until it simply could not run anymore. Made a note. Species displays exceptional endurance, capable of sustained physical activity for periods that would kill most carbon-based. He continued reading. Human bones healed themselves when broken. Their immune systems could adapt to new diseases within generations. They could survive the loss of limbs, organs, and significant portions of their brain. They could eat almost anything organic and extract nutrition from it. They could survive temperature ranges that span nearly 100 degrees. And they did not stop. That was the detail that kept appearing in every biological study. Humans did not stop. They could be wounded, poisoned, starved, and broken, and they would keep going. They would crawl if they could not walk. They would fight with their teeth if they lost their hands. Move to the third layer. History. This was where he began to feel afraid. They had ruled their empire for 800,000 years. In that time they had fought exactly 43 wars. They had won all of them, usually within a few years. Humanity had been a technological civilization for only 300 years. In that time they had fought thousands of wars. not against other species, against each other, found records of a conflict called the First World War. In 4 years, humans had killed 17 million of their own kind, then only 20 years later they had done it again. Second World War had killed 70 million humans. They had invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had used those weapons on themselves. Then they had gotten up, buried their dead, rebuilt their cities, and kept going, found records of something called the Cold War, where two groups of humans had built enough weapons to destroy their planet several times over. They had pointed these weapons at each other. For 50 years, they had lived with the constant knowledge that everything they had ever built could be erased in an afternoon. They had not destroyed themselves. They had found a way through. He found records of plagues that killed half of their population, climate disasters that flooded coastlines and turned farmland to desert, civil wars and revolutions, and genocides. Each time they rebuilt, each time they came back stronger. The final layer was classified at the highest level, almost did not have access to it, but the conquered had special provisions for species actively at war, and he was able to unlock the files with proper authorization. Inside he found the reports from first contact. They had made contact with humanity. Counselor himself had led the delegation. The files contained his observations and recommendations, written 200 years before. This species must never be provoked into total war, had written. Their history demonstrates a capacity for violence that exceeds any known civilization. They have weapons of mass destruction that they developed independently without any external threat. They built these weapons to use on each other. They are the only species in our records to have used atomic weapons in actual combat. Kept reading. However, it must also be noted that humanity displays remarkable capacity for restraint, cooperation, and recovery. They have chosen not to destroy themselves many times when destruction was easily within reach. They have rebuilt after every catastrophe. They have learned from their mistakes, however slowly. Our recommendation is peaceful integration and careful monitoring. Under no circumstances should they be given reason to view the galactic community as an enemy. The report ended with a single line underlined twice. If humanity ever decides that their survival requires the destruction of another species, they will not hesitate, and they will succeed. Sat in his archive for a long time after reading that line. Then he compiled his report and submitted it to the General Archives. Within hours, the report had been accessed by thousands of delegations across the galaxy. The military command received a summary and dismissed it as biological curiosities and ancient history, but other species read more carefully. The civilization of traders and diplomats quietly moved their assets out of the conflict zone. The who had fought alongside the in 3 previous wars sent a polite message declining to participate in this one. The whose empire bordered human space on the far side suddenly became very interested in signing non-aggression pacts, and in the Dominion, a young intelligence officer named E read the full archive report 3 times. He was troubled by what he saw. He requested a meeting with his commanding officer to discuss his concerns. The humans are persistent predators, he explained. Their entire evolutionary History is built around one strategy. Outlasting their prey, they do not need to be faster or stronger, they just need to keep going until their enemy cannot. His commander, a crystal being named, dismissed his concerns. They are soft creatures. Our warriors can survive in vacuum, humans cannot. Their history suggests they will adapt, Commander. They always adapt. Their history is irrelevant. They fought wars against each other with primitive weapons. They have never faced a true galactic power. He tried one more time. Commander, I recommend we at least prepare for unconventional tactics. The humans have gone quiet since the declaration. Their colonies are evacuating. Their communication networks have gone dark. We do not know what they are doing. They are running, said. It is what prey does. 3 days later, the Third Fleet arrived at the first human colony in the system. They found empty buildings and silent streets. 12 million humans had vanished. The fleet admiral was annoyed, but not concerned. He left a garrison to occupy the empty world and moved on to the next system. 5 days after that, the garrison stopped reporting. A scout ship sent to investigate found the garrison ships drifting in orbit. Every aboard was dead. There were no signs of battle, no weapon signatures, no evidence of how it had been done. The humans had simply reached out across the light years and killed them all. And now, for the first time, the High Command felt something they had not felt in 800,000 years. They felt afraid. In the empty corridors of the abandoned colony, a single message had been left carved into a wall. It was written in the language, perfectly formed, as if the humans had wanted to make absolutely certain it would be understood. It said, "You were warned." Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion and watched his fleet burn. 3 months had passed since the declaration of war. In that time, they had won every battle. The problem was that there had been no battles. The humans refused to fight, not in the way they understood fighting. There were no fleet engagements, no orbital bombardments, no ground invasions to repel. The human military had simply vanished into the black between stars and refused to come out. Instead, they did other things. They appeared without warning in supply lanes and destroyed cargo ships. They slipped past defensive perimeters and sabotaged power stations. They hacked communication networks and filled them with false reports and contradictory orders. They assassinated officers in their quarters and vanished before anyone knew they had been there. They had 800,000 ships. The humans had 12,000. By every measure of military strength, this war should have been over in weeks. But you cannot fight an enemy who refuses to stand still. You cannot crush a foe who melts away like smoke whenever you reach for them. Admiral had lost 60 ships in the past month alone, not in combat. His ships had simply stopped reporting. When he sent scouts to find them, the scouts vanished too. When he sent fleets, they found nothing but debris and silence. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, "We have detected another anomaly in the ore system." "What kind of anomaly?" "Unknown, sir. The patrol fleet there has gone dark. All 12 vessels, no distress signals." Felt his crystal body vibrate with frustration. How are they doing this? "We have the most advanced detection systems in the galaxy. Our shields can withstand planetary bombardment." "How are they reaching our ships?" No one had an answer. The truth which they were only beginning to understand was that humanity had not built a navy designed to win battles. They had built something far more dangerous. They had built a navy designed to break empires. Humanity's ships were small, fast, and nearly invisible. Most of them carried crews of only 1 or 2 people. Some carried no crew at all, guided by simple artificial minds with one purpose: find the enemy and hurt them. These ships could travel for months without resupply. Their pilots could survive in conditions that would drive most species insane, alone in the dark, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Humans had evolved for this. Their ancestors had followed wounded prey for days across empty grasslands. Their descendants could follow wounded empires for years across empty space. And they were patient, so terribly patient. In the home systems, things were falling apart. It had started small, a power relay here, a communication satellite there, a supply depot that mysteriously exploded. Each incident was minor on its own. Together they formed a pattern of slow strangulation. The economy depended on interstellar trade, food from agricultural worlds, raw materials from mining colonies, manufactured goods from industrial centers. All of it moved through shipping lanes that had been safe for thousands of years. Those lanes were no longer safe. Insurance companies refused to cover cargo. Private shipping firms canceled their contracts. Even allied species began routing their vessels around space, adding weeks to their journeys rather than risk the humans on. Their prices began to rise. Luxury goods disappeared first, then common goods, then essentials. Protests broke out in the crystal cities. Snort citizens demanded to know why the mighty Dominion could not stop a handful of soft, short-lived creatures from disrupting their lives. The High Command had no good answers. They tried everything they could think of. They sent hunter-killer groups to patrol the shipping lanes. The humans avoided them. They established sensor networks to detect incoming attacks. The humans slipped through. They fortified their most important systems with massive fleets. The humans simply attacked somewhere else. It was like trying to catch water with a net. The harder they squeezed, the more slipped through their fingers. Intelligence Officer E, the same young officer who had tried to warn his commanders before the war, was promoted 3 times in 3 months. His superiors kept dying and he kept being right. He stood before the War Council, now presenting his latest analysis. The humans are not trying to defeat us militarily, he explained. They know they cannot match our numbers. Instead, they are attacking our infrastructure, our economy, and our will to fight. Then we will attack their infrastructure. A council member said, we will destroy their colonies. They have already evacuated their colonies. There is nothing there to destroy. Where did they go? Everywhere. Counselor, they dispersed their population across thousands of small stations, ships, and hidden outposts. There is no central target, no to threaten, no capital to capture. That is absurd. A civilization cannot function that way. He hesitated. With respect, Counselor, humans are not like us. They do not need crystal cities and ancient traditions. They can live anywhere. They can eat almost anything. They can survive in conditions that would kill us in hours. Their civilization is not a place, it is a network, and networks cannot be destroyed by destroying places. The council was silent. This was not a war they understood. It was not a war anyone understood. Finally, the eldest counselor spoke. What do they want? What will it take to end this? I do not know, he admitted. They have made no demands, they have offered no terms, they simply keep fighting. Then we will send an envoy. We will negotiate. We tried that, counselor. 3 envoys. All 3 ships were found drifting with their crews dead. The humans left the same message each time. What message? He pulled up a holographic image. It showed a wall on a dead ship with words carved into the metal in perfect script. It says, you were warned, far from space, in a region of dead stars and empty void, a fleet was gathering. This was not the scattered force of raiders and saboteurs that had been tormenting the Dominion. This was something else, something that had been hiding in the dark since the war began. The human battle fleet had been designed for one purpose: to end wars, not to fight them, to end them. It consisted of 3,000 vessels, each one built around weapons that they had never seen and could not imagine. Admiral James stood on the bridge of the flagship Endurance and reviewed the final reports from the harassment campaign. Shipping was down 60%. Their economy was contracting. Their population was frightened and angry. Snorts, their military was exhausted from chasing shadows. They're almost ready, his tactical officer said. Almost agreed. A few more weeks, let them get a little more desperate, a little more tired, then we move. They have been reaching out through back channels. They want to negotiate. I know. Should we respond? Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the declaration of war. He thought about Ambassador asking 3 times if they were certain. He thought about all the chances they had been given. Not yet, he said. They declared this war because they thought we were weak. They need to understand how wrong they were. They need to understand it completely. Then we can talk. He looked out at the gathered fleet, thousands of ships hanging in the darkness, waiting. They wanted to know what humanity was capable of. We're going to show them. 6 months into the war, the Dominion finally understood what they were fighting. It was not an army. It was not even a nation. It was something older and more terrible than either of those things. The counselor had requested an audience with the throne 12 times since the war began. 12 times he had been refused that. Did not need advice from ancient scholars. They were warriors. They would solve this problem with strength, but strength had not worked. Nothing had worked, and now with their economy in ruins and their population on the edge of revolt, the throne finally agreed to listen. Entered the Crystal Palace. Slowly, he was old beyond measure, his body bent and worn by centuries of existence, but his mind was sharp and his many eyes held a weight of knowledge that few beings could match. The throne was not a single ruler, but a council of the 7 most powerful crystal beings in the Dominion. They sat in a circle of light, their bodies refracting rainbows across the chamber walls. You asked to speak with us, the first voice said. Speaker stood in the center of the circle. I came to warn you before the war. You would not listen. Now I come to explain. Perhaps it is not too late. Explain what you are fighting. The first voice made a sound of impatience. We know what we are fighting. Humans, soft creatures from a small planet. Insignificant. No said, you do not understand. That is why you are losing. We are not Losing, we have won every engagement. You have won no engagements because there have been none. The humans have not allowed you to fight them. They have simply hurt you day after day, week after week, until you are exhausted and afraid and desperate for it to stop. He paused, letting that sink in. This is not a strategy they invented for this war. This is what they are. This is how they survived. Raised a device and projected an image into the air. It showed a planet, blue and green and white, beautiful and terrible Earth. He said they're a class 4. By standard classification, extreme temperature variations, frequent natural disasters, predators on every continent, diseases that evolved specifically to kill them. This world spent millions of years trying to destroy humanity. It failed. The image changed to show humans, early humans, primitive beings with stone tools and animal skins. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. They could not fly. They could not swim fast. They could not survive extreme cold or heat. By every measure, they should have gone extinct. But they did not. The first voice said, "We know this." It does not explain their military capabilities. It explains everything. His voice grew harder. Do you know how they hunted? They did not chase their prey like other predators. They followed it for hours, for days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, until it literally could not take another step. The prey would run, and the humans would walk after it, run and walk, run and walk, until running was no longer possible. He looked at each of the throne members in turn. That is what they are doing to you. They are not trying to defeat your fleets. They are exhausting you. They will keep going until you cannot. We have resources they cannot match. The second voice said, "We can outlast them." Can you? Your economy has contracted 40% in 6 months. Your shipping lanes are closed. Your population is angry and afraid. How long can you maintain a war footing without trade, without supplies, without hope? The crystal beings were silent. Humans can endure for generations. Continued. They have done it before. They fought wars among themselves that lasted 30 years or 100 red years. They have a concept they call total war, where every citizen, every resource, every thought is devoted to victory. They invented this concept. No other species in our records has ever practiced it. Then what do you suggest? The first voice asked. That we surrender. I suggest you understand what you are facing, and then I suggest you pray that they are willing to show mercy. Mercy, we are the Dominion. We do not ask for mercy. Sighed. It was a heavy sound, full of sadness and something like pity. Then you will not receive it. And in 100 years scholars will study the fall of thee as a lesson in what happens when pride refuses to learn. He turned to leave, then stopped. There is one more thing you should know. The humans have not used their real fleet yet. What? The ships that have been attacking you are raiders, saboteurs, scouts. Their battle fleet has been waiting in dark space since the war began. 3,000 vessels, weapons you have never seen, technology they developed, secret, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. The throne members looked at each other. If they have such a fleet, why haven't they used it? Because they were giving you time to understand, time to realize your mistake, time to seek peace. His voice dropped. That time is almost over. As if to prove his words, an alarm began to sound throughout the palace. The humans had come. They emerged from darkness like ghosts, 3,000 ships appearing at the edge of the home system without warning. There had been no detection, no advanced warning, nothing. One moment the system was secure, the next it was surrounded. The defense fleet scrambled to respond. They had 5,000 ships in the home system, the largest concentration of military power in the Dominion. They should have had the advantage. They were wrong. The human fleet did not advance. It did not attack. It simply held position, forming a perfect sphere around the system, blocking every exit, every shipping lane, every escape route. And then the human ships began to broadcast. Every screen in the home system displayed the same image, a human woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Ambassador, she looked exactly as she had on the day she accepted the declaration of war. People of the Dominion, she said, 6 months ago, your leaders declared war on humanity. We asked them 3 times if they were certain. They were certain. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of those 6 months, the dead ships, the ruined economy, the endless grinding. Fear, now you see what that certainty has caused. Your shipping lanes are closed, your economy is broken. Your warriors are exhausted from fighting an enemy who refuses to stand still, and now our fleet surrounds you. She paused. We could end this now. We have weapons that could shatter your planet's crust. We have the capability to destroy everything you have ever built, you know. This is true because you have spent 6 months learning what we are capable of. In the Crystal Palace, the throne members watched in silence. They had no words, they had no plans, they had only the terrible realization that everything had said was true. But we are not here to destroy you, continued. We are here to end this war. We are here to offer you a choice. Tomorrow at this time I will return to the galactic conquered. I will stand on the same platform where your ambassador declared war, and I will wait. If your representative comes to withdraw the declaration and discuss peace, we will talk. We will find a way forward. We will help you rebuild what this war has broken. If no one comes, we will assume you have chosen to continue fighting, and we will respond accordingly. The broadcast ended. The screens went dark. In the silence that followed, the first voice of the throne finally spoke. What have we done? No one had an answer. The great hall of the galactic conquered was more crowded than it had been in 1,000 years. Every species with representation had sent their highest officials. Those without representation had begged, bribed, and bargained for observer positions. History was about to be made, and no one wanted to miss it. Ambassador stood on the central platform. She wore the same simple dark suit she had worn 6 months before. She looked exactly the same, calm, patient. Waiting around her, the human delegation stood in quiet rows. They did not speak. They did not fidget. They simply waited, as their ancestors had waited on African grasslands 200,000 years before, as their descendants would wait on worlds not yet discovered. The delegation entered the hall. They were not the proud, glittering beings who had made the declaration of war. Snorts, their crystal bodies were dimmed with stress and exhaustion. Their movements were slow and uncertain. They looked like what they were, a people who had glimpsed their own extinction and pulled back just in time. Ambassador Iran approached the platform. He stopped a few feet from, just as he had done 6 months before, but now there was no towering arrogance, no contemptuous Laughter. Ambassador, he said, his voice was quiet, almost humble. I have been authorized by the throne to withdraw the declaration of war against humanity. A murmur rippled through the great hall. Not at once. The withdrawal is accepted. What terms do you propose for peace? Or hesitated. He had prepared for this moment, rehearsed the words 100 times, but now that it was here, the words felt impossibly heavy. We do not know what terms to propose. We expected you to make demands. What kind of demands? Territory, resources, reparations. Surrender of our military. We assumed you would want something from us. Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the vast hall. Ambassador, humanity did not fight this war to take your territory. We did not fight it to plunder your resources. We did not fight it to humiliate you or destroy you or turn you into subjects of our empire. Then why did you fight? Because you declared war on us, because you gave us no choice, because we have spent our entire existence fighting for survival. And we have learned that when someone threatens us, we must respond with everything we have. She stepped closer to the ambassador. We fought to end the war, that is all. We want nothing from you except peace. Iran's crystal body flickered with confusion. You surrounded you destroyed our economy, you killed thousands of our warriors, and you want nothing. We want you to understand. We want the galaxy to understand. Looked around at the assembled delegates, meeting eyes of 1,000 different shapes and colors. Humanity does not seek war. We never have. We spent most of our history fighting each other, and we grew sick of it. We reached for the stars, hoping to leave that violence behind. But we will not be destroyed. We will not be conquered. We will not be pushed aside because someone decides we are weak or insignificant. And when someone forces us to fight, we will fight until the fighting is done, not until we win. Until it is done. She turned back to Iran. Here are our terms. The declaration of war is withdrawn. All military forces return to their pre-war position. All prisoners on both sides are released. Borders remain as they were before the conflict, and we establish a joint commission to prevent future misunderstandings. The ambassador stared at her. That is, those are the terms we had before the war. Yes, you are asking for nothing we did not already have. Yes, then what was the point? What did we fight for? Expression softened slightly. For the first time there was something like sympathy in her eyes. You fought because you thought you could win, because you believed that strength meant dominance, and dominance meant security. You learned that there are species in this galaxy who will not be dominated, not because we are stronger than you, but because we would rather die than submit. And dying is something we are very, very good at surviving. She extended her hand. It was a human gesture, one that meant trust and agreement, or had studied human customs enough to know this. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and took her hand in his crystalline grip. Peace, he said. Peace, she agreed. The great hall erupted in sound, cheers from some delegations, relieved sighs from others, excited chatter from the observers. The war that everyone had expected to end in extinction had ended in a handshake, but the lessons of that war would echo through the galaxy for generations. 10 years later, the first comprehensive history of the human war was published. It was required reading at every Military Academy in the Conquered. The final chapter was simply titled Conclusions. It read in part they made 3 critical errors. First, they assumed that biological vulnerability meant military weakness. Second, they believed that past success guaranteed future victory. Third, and most fatally, they declared war on a species without understanding what that species truly was. Humanity is not remarkable because of their technology, their numbers, or their physical capabilities. They are remarkable because of their persistence. They are a species forged by 200,000 years of hardship, tempered by constant struggle, and utterly incapable of giving up. They tried to break them and discovered that humanity does not break. They bend, they adapt, they endure, and when the storm has passed, they are still standing, ready to rebuild, ready to continue, ready to try again. Future generations considering conflict with humanity should remember this: they have already survived everything their own planet could throw at them. They have already survived everything they could throw at each other. Whatever you bring against them, they have faced worse. They will still be fighting when yours have forgotten why the war began. They will still be fighting when your empire is dust and legend. They will still be fighting when the stars themselves burn out. This is not a threat, it is simply what they are. 50 years after the war, a new species made first contact with humanity. They were called the, and they were young and curious and full of questions. Their ambassador met with a human diplomat on a station at the edge of explored space. After the formal greetings were complete, the ambassador leaned forward with obvious excitement. "We have heard stories about your species," she said. "Incredible stories. They say you are the deadliest beings in the galaxy. They say you fought the Dominion to a standstill. They say you could have destroyed them completely, but chose not to." The human diplomat smiled. He was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Stories tend to grow in the telling," he said, "but are they true? Are humans really as dangerous as they say?" The diplomat considered the question carefully. "We can be dangerous," he admitted, "when we have to be, when someone threatens our families, our homes, our future, when there is no other choice, and when there is a choice." The diplomat's smile widened. "When there is a choice, we prefer to make friends. We have spent too much of our history making enemies. It gets tiring after a while." The ambassador laughed. It was a pleasant sound full of relief. "I think I am going to like humanity," she said. "I hope so." The diplomat replied, "We are really much nicer than the stories suggest. We just prefer not to be pushed." He stood and offered his hand, just as ambassador had done half a century before. "Welcome to the galaxy, ambassador. We are glad you are here. Now let us see what we can build together." That took his hand, and somewhere in the great archives of the Galactic Conquered, historian added a new entry to the file. On humanity, it read simply: first contact with the collective successful status friends. It was the historian reflected exactly how humans preferred things to turn out when given the choice.